Service automation is a user management self-service solution designed to delegate user management into the organization. For example, delegate group management, delegate distribution group management, delegate share management. It will help ICT departments to prevent accumulation of licenses and access rights. Please note that in this video, we will only show the new functionalities for the February 2021 release. Please go to docs.helloid.com or our YouTube channel for more videos. Let's get started. In this video, we'd like to start with a PowerPoint presentation and then demo the new functionalities for the February 2021 release. We have two new features in this release. The first item is Add Agent Pool Selection to New PowerShell Data Sources. With this new feature, you can select the HelloID agent pool that will be used to execute the PowerShell script for this data source. The second item is Add JSON Object Support for Data Source Input in Configuration screen. Now you can change your data source input from text to a JSON object, making it much easier to set up and test your PowerShell data source. Let's demonstrate these new features. First, we'll take a closer look at the new agent pool selection for PowerShell data sources. In the Admin panel, we have opened an existing PowerShell data source. In the first and the second window, we haven't changed anything, but on the third window, you will notice that we have added the option to select an agent pool. If you don't select an agent pool, HelloID will select one for you every time this data source gets executed. This might not be the same agent pool every execution when you have multiple agent pools configured. In these types of configurations, you want to select a specific agent pool so it always gets executed with the same agent pool. If you click on the Save icon, the data source configuration will be saved and this agent pool will be used every time this PowerShell data source is executed. It will also be executed directly from a form. The other feature we'd like to show you is the JSON object support for data source input. To demonstrate this feature, we would like to illustrate this with a simple form. In the first page of this form, you can enter a search value to find an Active Directory account. This data source uses a text input to search the Active Directory account. After selecting the Active Directory account, you can go to the second page where additional properties are shown for the selected account. This second data source uses not a simple text input, but instead uses the complete object of the selected Active Directory account from this grid. Let's look at this in greater detail when switching to the editor mode. For example, if you search for John, you will see that the results are shown in the grid. On the left side, you can see that the search field has a value, namely John, which is the text value we have entered over here. If we select the first record, you'll see that we have a grid property as well, which has 7 different properties. This is not just a simple text value, like the search field, but it's an object with multiple properties. This complete object represents the selected record. You can also switch to another record, where we have different property values. With this selection, we can go to the second page, and in this page, additional user properties are received, using the selected record from the grid. Now let's move over to the data source configuration for both of these data sources. First, we take a look at the data source that uses a simple text input to search for the Active Directory user accounts. This data source uses the input called search user. If we enter a value of, for example, John, we can execute the PowerShell script. All the results are received and are shown in the received data. So this still works as it used to work. Now let's move over to the more advanced data source, which uses an object instead of a text value as an input. This data source has an input called selected user. This is not a simple text value, but it represents the selected user object from the grid. Therefore, we cannot just enter John and execute the script, because the script actually expects a complete object. It will normally receive this from the form by selecting a user in the grid. Now we have created a new feature, and we can change this input to interpreted as JSON. We can enter a JSON value, a JSON object, as an input instead of text. Let's copy one of the results from the first data source. Now we have entered a JSON object with different properties, which represents the selection from a grid. Here you can see that this JSON is valid and we can execute the PowerShell script again. Now we see that it will receive the actual data. To test your data source, you can change the data source input type in this screen from a simple text value into a more complex JSON object. Please let us know if you have any additional questions. You can post your question in YouTube or send it to isupport@toolsforever.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive frequent updates about improvements and changes in HelloID. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.